All right, again, this is a sikha that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave in Tafshin Nun Beit. Tafshin Nun Beit, 1992. Very shortly before he had a stroke, which rendered him mute, couldn't speak. So these are very important words that the Rebbe is saying, and especially because the Rebbe was the only person in the world that was working actively to bring all the Jews back to their senses, to Judaism, and thereby to bring the Moshiach. That's why the Rebbe had spread all these Chabad houses all over the world and had so many Hasidim that were self-sacrificing. The whole reason was only to bring Mashiach. In this week's Torah portion, Kitisa, we find something brand new. The Torah speaks about topics that go from one end to the other. Good things, bad things, best things, the worst things. First of all, it starts off talking about the first tablets that God gave. Best thing there could possibly be. Directly from God. The purpose why God took them out of Egypt. Then the Torah tells us about the worst thing that could possibly be. The sin of the golden calf. And how Moses broke the first tablets. Then it goes back again to the other way. Tikkun v'kapara, fixing up and forgiveness for the sin by means of Moses praying to God. He receives the 13 attributes of mercy. And Moses seeing the glory of God. The 13 attributes of mercy. And then giving the second tablets. And finally, the Torah portion ends with the Jewish people seeing the ray of the Kirin or Pnei Moshe, that the face, the skin of the face of Moshe shined, Quran, that it shined. Afal pi, even though Shinyanim Elu, that these things, Heim Mu'uros, are events, She'iru b'memshech echad, that they happen in one continuation. The Jews got the first tablets. Moses went up on Mount Sinai, came back down, saw the Jewish people worshiping the golden calf, broke the tablets, went back up on Mount Sinai, prayed to God for forgiveness. God forgave, went up at Mount Sinai the third time. God gave him the second tablets. Harinos of the Kach, in addition to this, Sheish Lahavin, we have to understand, why does the Torah even tell us Barichos, it's such great detail in Yanim Abilti Ritzuyim, these negative things. Ubafrat, and especially my Dahavahave, whatever there was, there was. It says that the Torah tries as much as possible to avoid saying negative things, to the point where when in the unclean animals, the Torah doesn't say the animals that are defiled, tameh, right? It says the animals which are not pure. The Torah tries to avoid any negative speech. And here we have the great detail about the most negative thing that ever happened. How the Jews served the golden calf, what the result was. But that's one thing. Hariyim and Yanim, Shonim Lagamri, these are things that are totally different. Mina katzei ala katzei, from one end to the other. The greatest distance there can possibly be. And the Rebbe will explain. What is the greatest distance? The first tablets, they were the highest thing that could be given from above. The Luchot Maaseh Elokim Ema. The tablets, they are the work of God. And the handwriting is the handwriting of God. Highest thing there could possibly be. Never been a thing in the world like the tablets, the first tablets. Shvirat Luchot, the breaking of the tablets, because of the sin of the golden calf, Rita, this is a descent. She'ein kamota, that there's nothing like it. Afterwards were the 13 attributes of mercy. Riyat Moshe, and Moshe saw the glory of God. This is the highest thing. After that, God gave the second tablets. This is a totally different type of tablets than the first one. Like God said, Pasal Lacha, that you have to carve out. This comes from the sin, Ushvirat Aluchot Rishonot, and the breaking of the first tablets. And it was given at a different time. The first tablets were given at the end of the first 40 days. The giving of the tablets, this was at the end of the third 40-day period, on Yom Kippur. Nevertheless, Boim Khan, all of them come here together in one Torah portion, in one continuation. Shemizem moving from this one, we can understand. Shenogea liyadea. This must be very important to know. Shekulam, that all of them, im chelek, are a portion, mihemshech inyanim echad, from one topic. So again, the fact that Jewish people sin with the golden calf, the Torah could have just made a mention. It could have mentioned, right? There's many things in the Torah which are mentioned in a hint, and they're explained only in the Midrash. This could have been also, right? For instance, Abraham getting thrown into a fiery furnace. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Torah that happened. It's written in a Midrash, and that was a very good thing, a big miracle. No, if the Torah could have withheld from us this big miracle that Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace, or that Moses, the Paro, tried to chop off his head, and his head turned into marble, and it didn't work. These are big miracles. The Torah doesn't tell us. But what the Torah does tell us is this terrible thing about the golden calf, right? So why does it have to such great length about this negative thing? And not only that, this Torah portion jumps from the highest down to the lowest. The Torah could have just told us about the greatness of the first tablets, and then it could have said something, a little word about it. Moses went up 3 times in Mount Sinai. Why did he go up? You'll find out later. And he brought down the second tablets because the first ones got broke. But what happened? They stumbled, he broke the tablet. What happened? No, say it in a Midrash what happened. No, every detail is here. Everyone can read. First of all, in our Torah portion, it speaks also orot pratim, the details of Mailat Luchot Rishonot, of the first tablets. Luchot Evan, they were tablets of stone, Ketuvim be'etzva Elokim, which were written with the finger of God. Luchot Ketuvim b'shtei Avraham, these tablets were written on both sides, Mizeh u'mizeh. Luchot Maaseh Elokim Hema, amazing miracles. It said there were several letters that stood up just in a miracle. The letter Samach, the letter Mem. It says they were carved from one end all the way through. Michtav Elokimu, Charut al-Luchot, it's carved out on the tablets. Big miracles. It says the Luchot Acharonot. It says that even in the last tablets, the second tablets, you could feel the greatness of the first tablets. God said to Moses, Pasal Lacha, Shnei Luchot Karishonim. Like God said to Moses, carve out for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Something like the first ones. Because they don't come up to the level of the first ones, that the first ones are the work of God. At first glance, Pritim, Milas, Haluchos, Rishonos, Hayitzarichim, Lichotev, Besov Parshas Mishpatim. At first glance, it says the greatness of the first tablets should have been written at the end of Parshas Mishpatim, or earlier. Shagam hu makom ikori b'medaber orot luchot rishono. What happened? Moses went up. The Torah is not written in a chronological order. So it says that Moses went up on Mount Sinai. That was in Parshat Yitro. The next Torah portion after that was Mishpatim. The end of Parshat Mishpatim, it talks about things that happened before Moses went up to receive the Torah. God says, go up to me to the mountain. I will give you the tablets of stone, etc. There it should have said, when God's promised Moses, I'm going to give you the first tablets, right? At the end of Parshas Mishpatim. In other words, this is 3 Torah portions earlier. There it should have said what the first tablets are like. Here in our Torah portion, Hayamasvik, it would have been enough just to say in a short way, right? That Moses broke the first tablets. It could have said when God gave the tablets, when he finished speaking 2 tablets, and etc. And that's all. And then afterwards, it could have said the story about how Vayaram Kiboshes Moshe, that the people made a mistake and they broke the tablets and they served the golden calf and caused Moses to break the tablets. And there's what's going on over here. In this week's Torah portion, it tells us something that could have been told earlier in other Torah portions, namely the highness and the greatness and the wonder and the preciousness of the first tablets. The first tablets. And why is it saying it over here in this week's Torah portion? And especially because afterwards it says that Moses broke them. That makes it even worse. Moses broke the tablets. Now you're talking about how great they were. Talk about it earlier in the Torah. How is it possible? How is it fitting? When it's talking about this terrible sin and breaking the tablets, Yosifu Inyanim, all of a sudden it tells you new things about how wonderful the first tablets were. Arizel Darek Lagr Larosh. It's like making fun of a crippled person or of a person that's whatever sick or something, to make fun of him. A poor person. A person is poor and he loses all of his money, right? I got bad news. I was robbed today, all my money. And everybody says, you're a fool, you're a loser, you're this. That's not good, right? And then to start saying, not only are you a loser, how much did you had a chance to make $1 million. You could have been really rich. You money, oh, look, I see they took your ring. They took your diamond thing, right? Your diamonds, and they start praising about how much money he used to have and how his diamond was so beautiful and all this. Enough, right? Guy, he feels bad enough that he was robbed. You have to go and make, right? Oh, your car used to be so nice, used to be able to drive. Now you can't go anywhere. You're going to have to walk. Maybe you can, get a job cleaning the streets. The fellow feels bad enough. He was robbed and then everything was stolen from him. Now you're going to tell him about how great his car was, how much money he had. The same thing. The tablets were broken. Now is the time to tell about how great the tablets were and how wonderful they were. This is like making fun of a poor person. Chas v'shalom. Ella shemizeh moving. It must be understood from this. Shekan boim aluchot rishonot. That here is talking about the first tablets. Lo ketafela. Not to be something secondary, hakdama, and a preparation for the terrible story of this the worshiping the golden calf and the breaking of the tablets, but this must be one continuation. There must be some positive purpose about telling us about the breaking of the tablets. And before that, to tell us about how precious and wonderful the tablets were, things that weren't revealed previously in the Torah. This must be one big continuation of the first tablets and the breaking of the tablets and the second tablets. So it's telling us something about life. Afilu lefi pirush Rashi, even according to what Rashi said, she'ein mukdam me'uchar b'Torah, that there is no chronological order in the Torah. Right, the order that things appear are not necessarily the order in the Torah, are not necessarily the order that things occurred. For instance, there's an argument was the Maisa Egel, that the worshiping of the golden calf. Some say this was before the Mishkan, right? Yomim Rabim, a long time. The two previous Torah portions that we said, Torah portions that we said were about building the Mishkan. And now we're talking about the sin of the golden calf. When did that happen? Before God commanded the Jews about the making this Mishkan, or after? Well, the Rebbe said it could very well be that the sin of the golden calf, it happened way before God told the Jews to build the tabernacle. But in the Torah, it doesn't happen that way. In the Torah, we learn about the tabernacle, and then afterwards, we learn about the golden calf. How do we know that the golden calf happened first? Because the Yud Zayin Tammuz, on the 17th day of Tammuz, the tablets were broken. And on the day Yom Kippur, God forgave the Jewish people. And the next day after Yom Kippur, they started building the tabernacle. And they finished. It took them, let's say, about a half a year to finish the tabernacle. Hari, so we see at first glance, Ein ze bir benogea the pratim amosafim kan odos haluchos rishonos. So, number one. Okay, so what are we saying? First of all, there was the sin of the golden calf. And then afterwards happened the building of the tabernacle, which we read about that a couple of weeks ago. Right? The building of the tabernacle, last week, the week before. So things, okay, they're not in the proper order. But nevertheless, God doesn't have to tell us all these details about the first tablets here. This should be way before in Mishpatim. The Ikar, the main thing is, according to what's known, even if you want to say that there's no chronological order, nevertheless, there's a reason why we should have heard about the greatness of the first tablets a long time ago. Everything in the Torah, even the order in the Torah, this is the tachlis, this is very exact. There's a reason why it wasn't just arbitrary, and this shows on the arbitrariness of the Torah, that it's not in chronological order. No, the reason that things are not in chronological order is because everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. So we have to understand why. Why Madua and Yani Manal Masuparim Khan Kitisa? Why is here talked about the greatness of the first tablets and how wonderful they were and how fine and they were the work of God? Why talk about it here? Even if you want to say that things are not in the chronological order, but still this could have been spoken about way before, when God was talking about the giving of the Torah, the tablets in Parshas Yitro, or after that in the end of Parshas Mishpatim. Weeks earlier it should have been told. Why tell us here about how high the first tablets were? In addition to this, it's also brought Korol the Siyama Parsha Nira. In the end of this week's Torah portion, is talking about something that really has nothing to do with anything. It's talking the commandment to keep the 3 holidays, to go up to the Holy Temple 3 times. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. What's that got to do with this over here? Why is that stuck in the end? The Torah portion is stuck. So the whole thing seems to be a big sort of confusion. Here it's talking about how wonderful and great the first tablets were, a topic which should have been spoken about earlier, weeks earlier. And then it talks about this terrible sin of the Jewish people in great, great detail. And how Moses broke these wonderful first tablets. And then it talks about how God forgave the Jewish people and gave them the second tablets. But the whole thing ends with talking about the holidays. What's that got to do with anything? Ashayla mitchazeka, says the Rebbe, the question is even more. The name of the Torah portion is called Kitisa. Yadu, it's known, Shem a Parsha, that the name of the Torah portion indicates Al Tochen Kol Parsha, talks about the whole content of the whole Torah portion. Al Pizeh, according to this, Tzurech Biur, we have to explain Shem a Parsha, this week's Torah portion, Kitisa. This is talking about what? Only one commandment that it happens to be that the Torah portion starts off with, to give what's called machzis a shekel, a half a shekel. This has no connection to the majority of the Torah portion. Like we said before, the majority of this Torah portion is speaking about other things totally. At first glance, they haven't got any connection to the beginning of the Torah portion. What's a kitisa? Tisa means when you lift up. But here in this, that's literally. But the implication of what this means is when you take a count, when you count the Jewish people. Kitisa, when you take a head count, and as you lift up the numbers of the Jewish people, you want to know how many Jews there are. Kitisa et Rosh Bnei Yisrael. So it says you make a head count. That's what kitisa means. What is it talking about? When is it that you count the Jewish people when? It says when they give this half shekel. Everybody had to give a half of a coin. You give this half of a coin, and then they counted the coins. You know how many Jewish people there were. Good. The whole Torah is called by this. When you count the Jewish people. Also, literally, it means when you lift up the heads of the Jewish people. Why does the whole Torah portion is called on this name? It must be that this name then somehow or other is also the name for the breaking of the tablets and how wonderful the tablets were, and God forgave the Jewish. All the things that happened are somehow or other contained in this title, Kitisa. Yeterim is even more, this whole occurrence of the egel of the golden calf, which is the main, takes up the most of this Torah portion. This is a descent that there's nothing like it. It says by means of this, there came back death into the world from the sin of the tree of knowledge. It says when Adam was supposed to live forever. As soon as he ate from the tree of knowledge, when Adam ate from the tree, it brought death into the world. And so it was for 2,500 years until God gave the Torah. When God gave the Torah, suddenly death stopped. If the Jewish people would not have sinned with the golden calf, there would be no more death in the world. It would have been like it was before the sin of the tree. But because the Jewish people did sin, so therefore this brought the whole thing back again. It was a rerun of the sin of Adam. Like it says, it says that I will always remember this sin of the golden calf. Tamid, anytime God says that I will bring a punishment for you for your sins, and a little bit of the sin of the golden calf will be there. The Ein Poranas Bo al Yisrael, there's no difficulties or hardships or holocaust that come to the Jewish people. Shein Bo Katzat Poron of Egel, that God always remembers the sin of the golden calf. If so, why is this Torah portion called Kitisa, elevating the heads of the Jewish people? This is exactly the opposite of Kitisa Rosh Israel, elevating the heads of the Jewish people. But Cain also, Besofa Parsha, in the end of the Torah portion, what does it talk about? The shining of the face of Moses. This also has to be explained. Why did Moses have this quality that his face shined, the skin of his face shined after he received the last tablets? Why wasn't Moses' face shining when he received the first tablets? That's how the Torah portion ends. right after it talks about the holidays, it talks about that when Moses would come down, his face was shining. When he would speak to the Jewish people, he would remove the covering over his face, and the Jewish people would see how his face was shining, and then he would cover it up again. When did Moses' face shine? It says after he received the second tablets. Well, that doesn't make any sense. When he received the first tablets, he had already been 40 days with the presence of God on Mount Sinai. Exactly the opposite. The revelation of God in the first tablets was much greater than in the last tablets. The last tablets says that Moses carved them out. The first were God carved them out. God, no suffering. The tablets, the first tablets, were given after the biggest, highest revelation of Matan Torah. And when the Mount Sinai says that the mountain was shaking and there was the fire and everything, and then God spoke the words of the Torah, and their souls jumped out of their bodies. That was the first tablets, which is not the case. The second tablets, they were given quietly. Moses just came down, and here's the second tablets. If so, it should be that Moses' face should have shined after the first tablets. Why are they shining after the second tablets? As we'll continue tomorrow. So what have we learned up to now? The Rebbe has asked a question. The Torah is our guidebook for life. The Torah is the only book given directly by God to the world. The Torah is tremendously important and vital. Every detail of the Torah is very important to every detail of our life. So let's look at the details of this week's Torah portion. First of all, it's called Kitisa, which means to be elevated. And it's talking about the worst things, the lowest point of Judaism. The Jews worshiped the golden calf, and they brought back death into the world. They brought death into the world, the lowest thing that can. What's it got to do with elevating? Also, why does the Torah over here tell us about how high and wonderful the first tablets were, things that it didn't talk about before? This is the Torah portion where the first tablets are destroyed. And why is it telling us about how high they were and wonderful? Also, why is it such a great detail of the sin of the golden calf? This is a shameful thing. It should have been mentioned just like in one word or something, in a hint. Why such great length? And why is it all in one continuation? The greatness of the first tablets, how the sin of the golden calf, Moses breaks the tablets, he goes back up to Mount Sinai, God forgives him. It gives him the second tablet. What is it must be some sort of a connection, and they must be connected all one to the other. What does this also have to do with the end of this week's Torah portion that talks about the 3 holidays? And how the Torah portion finally ends, that Moses' face shined. And this was after the second tablets. Why wasn't it shining after the first tablets? We'll learn about this and much more tomorrow. Let's do the Yom Yom. We have to do the Yom Yom. The giving of man, the gift of man, when a person gives, the giving of man increases him, yarchiv lo, v'lifnei gedolim yanatnu, and puts him in front of the great people. And puts him in front of the great. The giving of people. It says, some people are renowned for their wisdom. Some people are very rich. But what is man? When a person gives wisdom, teaches other people, that's wonderful. When a person gives money, also very good. But if a person gives himself to something to strengthen Judaism, then not only will he make room for himself, in other words, he'll make his life wider, but also it puts him in front of the great, even superior to the great people who are great in wisdom and great in understanding, makes him great. Very, very basic principle in life is that the world belongs to God. Doesn't belong to us. So what people think about us is very important, but it's not of prime importance. It's very important, right? To find favor in the eyes of people, but it's not of prime importance. The prime importance is what God thinks of us. To the point that there's a speech about the Rebbe I read last week, it said that the golden altar is mentioned the last thing, and it's in the holy. In other words, it's in a private place. Says the Rebbe the same thing. Giving charity should be in a quiet way. You should give a lot of charity, but not necessarily does everybody have to know about it. It has to be in the quiet. God has to know about it. Your relationship in this world is between you and God. That's the main thing. And if other people know good things, that's wonderful. But the essential thing is between you and the creator of the universe. Have a good day with Moshiach now. Hope to see you at 3:00. We'll learn Chumash with commentary.